Good evening, hockey fans, and welcome to another episode of American Beauties, your home for AHL news, notes, talkers, and more. We are brought to you by the Old City Sports Network. My name is Dan Bradley. Alongside me tonight, we've got Sam Wismer and Johnny Mack. Sam, Johnny, welcome to the show.
I'm here every week.
You're here every week. Johnny's our new guy, though. Johnny, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here. Just actually get off the ice here in Halifax, and excited to talk some American League hockey for sure.
Do you want to give us some of your background on what you do?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I actually grew up on the American Hockey League here. I was saying before we get on the air, we had a plethora of teams that came in this region back in the 70s and 80s. I'm aging myself, but I was able to watch a lot of real good players, Hall of Famers that started their career in the American Hockey League, and really enjoyed that. So I played a little bit. I played my youth hockey here in the Halifax, Nova Scotia area, and then went away. I played a little bit of junior in Toronto, Ontario, and then I went overseas to Europe and played a little bit over there, and kind of kicked around and had some fun. But I think my strength in the game is in development and coaching. I've been doing it for about 35 years now, so I've had a lot of success working with individuals and kids when they're young, and there's been several of them that I've had at a real young age, and I continue to kind of be an advisor and a skills coach, up into when they make the NHL and beyond that. So a couple notable names, obviously Sid Crosby is one of my guys, and Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand. They're all local Nova Scotia guys. And I was out west in Canada. I had coached Cale Makar for a season in Calgary. And, I had an 86 birth year group out of Toronto, and I had, 4 or 5 Stanley Cup winners that were on that team that I coached. So been around the sport my whole life. I have a son coming up now that's a pretty good player. And we're at the rink a lot. And just that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And then, of course, you're part of our Big Brother show as well with Center Ice here on the network. So, Johnny, very glad to have you on with us tonight. Let's go ahead and jump right in with a playoff update on the landscape of the AHL playoffs right now. So the Atlantic Division, the teams are locked. Hershey, Providence, Lehigh Valley, Charlotte, Hartford, and Springfield, they've all clinched their spot. But as of us recording this episode, Lehigh Valley, Charlotte, and Springfield are all tied for third place in that division. Sam, for those who are listening, just the audio version, the look of pure stress on Sam's face right now. It's worth going to YouTube. It's worth jumping on Twitter to look. Sam, how are you holding up with where Lehigh is at, and how do you think that the Atlantic Division is going to shape itself out here?
I mean, with Wilkes being eliminated, they really had a tough year. The Pittsburgh, was decimated by injuries. How the parent team is making it in the playoffs, I'll never know. Are they fighting for a spot right now?
They are. They're 1 point back of a playoff spot right now. And they play they play Chicago and Columbus for their next 2 games. They're playing Chicago tonight.
They win them, they're in. They win both of those, they're in.
Yep.
And either New York Islanders or Florida's out. So there's 3 of them that are fighting for 2 spots.
So the Atlantic Division, Michael Hellman, our weekly viewer, this is going to be a crazy finish to the Atlantic Division. That's for sure. Definitely. The crazy thing about the Atlantic Division is that Lehigh Valley, Charlotte, and Hartford and Springfield all clinched on the same night. Literally, they could have lost. All 4 teams could have lost. All Bridgeport had to do was play dead, and that's exactly what they did. They lost to Wilkes-Barre 7-1. So, I don't know how it's going to play out. Lehigh Valley plays tomorrow night, Friday and Saturday. We actually play Charlotte Friday. My dogs are fans too.
Of course.
And then, we play Bridgeport tomorrow night. And then Saturday we play Hershey. So obviously Hershey's been locked forever. Hershey is a powerhouse of a team. But they have recently recalled some guys. I know Joe Snively was recalled, and someone else was recalled today. I can't remember. But yeah, so Lehigh Valley, Charlotte, and Springfield are all tied for third place, and the bane of my existence right now.
And Hartford is 1 point back of those three. They have played one more game than that group as well, so they're probably going to end up in that 6th spot. But that 3 through 6 are separated by 1 point right now. I think that's closer than any of us thought that was going to be going into this year.
And everyone, I saw a comment today, I think it was on Twitter or Facebook, that, Lehigh Valley got in. They're not that great. But nobody realizes how tight this division has been all season. Johnny, how do you think that affects a team when a division is so tight like that?
Well, it's a two-sided coin, right? It gives you optimism that you can beat anybody on any given night, but it also gives you that kind of in the back of your head that anybody can beat us on any given night, right? I'm interested to watch Hartford. The coach Chris Knobloch is actually from my wife's hometown, which is a town of about 300 people in the middle of Saskatchewan. And it's funny, he's here. He's been in the NHL as an assistant. He coached Connor McDavid in Erie in the Ontario Hockey League, right to an OHL final. And he had some success in the Western League as well. I fully expect him to be in the National Hockey League by now. But he went back to he was an assistant. He was in Philly, I think, at one point with Hextall in the National Hockey League when Hextall was here. And then he ended up, wanting to be a head coach again, and he ended up in Hartford there. But it was a funny story. So the Team Canada World Juniors back in I don't know 2017-18, they had a goalie that was a real good AHL goalie, Connor Ingram. Do you remember Connor? He played for Milwaukee. Yeah, he's playing in Phoenix now. He's in the NHL now. So Connor is also from my wife's hometown. I'm telling you, there's 250 people in this whole town. So on this Team Canada junior team, Chris Knobloch was an assistant coach, and Connor Ingram was the starting goalie. The other goalie was Hart, in the Philly goalie. So literally a town of 250 people. You get 2 people on the national team that year. But that's my opinion. Is that you can really ride the momentum. I think you have to have a good start when there's a lot of parity in a division, and that the game's going to go either way. That you got to start on time. Teams I've coached, when you're playing a team that it's kind of a toss up. You got to start on time all the time, but it's very, and that doesn't mean get the lead or anything like that. That just means start the game on time, play it the right way, right? Get pucks deep, be physical, set the tone in the game, as opposed to sit back and let the other team set the tone, especially in your home rink, right? So,
for sure. I agree. I ask players when I do interview with them, do you think attitude has an effect on even if you're winning or losing, and either as a team or individually, and they all say yes. So
no, absolutely. If I'm looking, I've coached at every level from 4 or 5-year-old kids to professional hockey, and one of the things that I look for when I'm scouting is body language. So I will always sit if I'm watching a game that maybe a team that I'm working for is gonna looking at drafting a kid or trading for, I always sit across from the bench in the corner. So I want to see the whole ice, but I also want to see the body language on the bench. I want to see when the coach gets in a guy's ear and gives him a little blast for missing an assignment or something like that. I want to see how that guy reacts, because the guy that slumps his head down or maybe snaps back or rolls his eyes, things like that are indicators to me that maybe that guy doesn't have the character that I'm looking for in my organization, right? He might be skilled enough. He might be a good player, but absolutely attitude, being part of the team, towing the right line, being a pro, showing up for meetings, being early, being at the rink, putting in that extra time. Those are what makes you successful. You can have a bunch of real good players, but if they don't buy into the system and play the game the right way and do the right things, you're going to spin your tires.
Absolutely. Looking at the rest of the AHL landscape, and Johnny, I want to pick your brain here on the North Division, where the Marlies, they've had that thing wrapped up since like early January, pretty much.
Yeah.
Just ran away with things. Currently 9 points up on Rochester, but they had like a 20-point lead. I mean, just absurd the run that they went on. Rochester and Syracuse have secured their spots. Final two spots should be decided early this week. Laval and Utica are most likely to take those last two spots, but Cleveland is 1 point back. Belleville still not technically eliminated, but they're pretty much they're done.
Yeah.
So Johnny, I want to ask you, with watching you mentioned, of course, with the Leafs and the banner up there behind you, the Marlies this year, where did all of this come from? I think we thought the Marlies were going to be, one of the top three for sure in the North this year, but I didn't think that they, one, would win it, and two, that they'd win it this handily. What's gone right for the Marlies this year?
It's run like an NHL team. Let's be honest. It's in a big market. What they do is they integrate their players with the NHL program, right? The two rinks that they play at are 3 miles apart. So there's a lot of things that they're doing and bringing their prospects, not necessarily to play, not necessarily to practice, but they're around the guys. So they're seeing what it's like to be professionals, not minor league professionals, the Austin Matthews and the Mitch Marners and some of the best players in the world. Coaching. I mean, they turn over stones to get real good coaches in there, and they work with them. They have a real good system, and what they do is they kind of, and they've been doing this ever since certainly Shanny's come in. They almost have the NHL coach mentoring the American Hockey League coach. So what that's twofold. Obviously, if you're coaching the National Hockey League, you have a good pedigree and you've done something right in your career to get to that level. So everybody's aspirations in the minors is to make it, whether you're a coach or a player. So what they do is they not only help develop these coaches by giving them the opportunities to pick the NHL guys' brains and being in meetings and organizational meetings, but they're also mirroring the systems, right? So the systems that they're using in the O zone or the D zone in the National Hockey League, the American Hockey League is doing the same thing. So when you start moving players up and down, there's not that learning curve like you have in other organizations, right? I really thought Laval was going to be real deep this year.
That was my pick to win it all.
Yeah, well, I mean,
not win it all, but the division.
Montreal anyway. Got just I don't know. I mean, some of the injuries that they've they're shutting down guys for the year. I think they're being a little bit shady trying to get Mr. Bedard, but.
With the new rules, can they still get Bedard this year since they won the lottery last year?
Yeah.
I thought there was some rule
so.
that they.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you're in the bottom, you just have. Maybe you're right. I think they're tanking for him.
Yeah, I thought they couldn't win in back-to-back years, but they could. If they win it, the pick moves to 2.
I'm quite sure that if that comes in, they wouldn't. The league wouldn't allow it to come in this year. Everybody's known this kid's coming for 3 years, and if they're going to change that rule, it'll be after this draft.
That kid is going to be an absolute stud.
He's so good.
My son, we live in Halifax here, so the World Juniors were here, and I kind of had some connections. I knew some of the one of the kids on Team Canada who actually we're going to get on center ice. Real dynamic player, Jack Mateer, 6'5" defenseman. He's Nashville pick. So Jack is going to come on center ice. He's on a big playoff run right now. Ottawa is going to go deep. He's with the 67s. But so Jack and his family, I know the dad and the uncle. So we ended up having some beers, and we were at that quarterfinal game against Slovakia where Bedard went through 5 guys and scored in overtime. So after the game, we went up to kind of Jack. My Jack wanted to get some autographs from some of the players, so he ended up getting Connor Bedard to sign his jersey, and I spent a little bit of time talking and picking the brains of his mom and dad. Real nice people. And you know that kid's never had fast food ever.
It doesn't surprise me to hear that
ever
at all.
He's 17 years old. He's never had McDonald's, Burger King, nothing. And he said he may someday. He may, but it's got him to where he's but just a tremendous young man and a good family. Yeah.
We had Montana Anebuche on the show back in November. He plays for San Jose.
Yeah.
Barracuda. And he was saying like when he played for Everett Silvertips, Carter Hart would eat the same thing every day.
Yep.
Chocolate milk, 2 eggs, and then broccoli, rice, and chicken for lunch. And he even said to him, he's like, man, don't you ever get sick of that? And he goes, not that I like it, it's that I have to do it.
Yeah. I was superstitious like that too. So I got traded. I was playing in England, 92, 93, I think. And so I'm playing for a town that was called Stevenage, just north of London. And we had a Christmas break of a week, so I left. I got traded during the Christmas break and didn't know it, right? There's no internet or anything like that. So there's no mobile phones, nothing, right? I'm on Christmas holidays. I had some family in Wales. So I went to Wales and kind of living a good life. I get back thinking, okay, I think we're going on the road or something when I get back. I showed up at the rink and they're like waiting for me. I'm there for practice, and like the manager and the owner, and they're like, we traded you to Basingstoke. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, they're awful. And they were like, yeah, we're sorry, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It's a business. So off I go to Basingstoke, and the paperwork didn't go through the league in time for me to play that first game. So I sat and watched the game with the owner and had way too many beers, right? I'm sitting up in a little press box kind of thing. And anyway, by the end of the game, I'm loaded. So I go down and meet my new teammates. I hadn't even met them yet. And I go in and, we have a little talk. Next thing you know, we're all out. We got an afternoon game the next day. Paperwork goes through. I'm allowed to play the next day. Well, we probably partied until 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And we had a 2 o'clock game against the team that traded me. And this team at this point was like 18-1 or something like that, my new team. So I wake up and I'm literally puking. I'm so hungover. I can't eat anything, and I'm just sick to my stomach, and I got to go play my first game with this new team. So I'm like, I have to get something in my stomach, or how am I going to play a hockey game here? So there was a bowling alley in the same kind of business park as the arena in Basingstoke. So I was like, I'll go in there and I'll find something, and I'll eat it, and I'll get through this. So I go into this little bowling alley, and I get the greasiest cheeseburger I've ever had and a strawberry milkshake. And I sat in my car and I ate it, and I was like sweating, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I ended up going in, scored 4 goals, 2 assists, beat the shit out of their tough guy, and we won. First time they've won all year. So guess what I ate for the rest of the year right before a game? An hour before a game, I'm eating a greasy cheeseburger and a strawberry milkshake. So
I didn't eat dinner tonight, so that sounds wonderful right about now.
Yeah. Breakfast of champions.
Central Division. Texas and Milwaukee have locked up their spots, but again, the Central Division is giving me headaches. Manitoba, Iowa, Rockford, probably looking like your other options there, but the Chicago Wolves are 1 point out. Grand Rapids is officially eliminated there. Sam, how do you see the Central shaking out? Because I've watched the Central all year. I have my thoughts on it, but I want to hear from you as well on this one.
Well, our good friend Andrew Rinaldi He's not too happy. Because basically with Chicago is depending on Rockford right now. Plain and simple. I think Texas is going to take the division. Huge Texas fan for no reason. And I mean, they're just scary good. The whole organization. Johnny, I don't know if you know, but Texas is number 1 in all of their respective leagues.
Yeah.
No, the NHL, AHL, and the ECHL.
Wow. Is that attendance?
No, that's record.
In their divisions.
Their clubs are in first place in their respective divisions across.
I'm not surprised that, people don't give that state enough credit for. I mean, they're producing hockey players now. I coached down in Tucson back in 2005, 2006, and I think I had 7 kids from Texas. They can play, right? They grow up around it. There's a lot of development in the state. There's a lot of support. When you fill your rinks every night, it's quite easy to attract good players, right? I would look at the American Hockey League, and when we talked about this before I came on the air, we came on the air earlier. A lot of you can look at and try to predict what's going to happen in the playoffs, but I would challenge anybody that's trying to predict. Look at where their NHL team is, right? If they have an NHL team that's not in the playoffs, Lehigh, for example, right? That group is not going to get screwed with. You're going to have the same guys every night for this run. So is there anybody in Philly that can get sent down?
Right now, Adam Jennings.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? You're going to get some, you have that opportunity. Whereas Texas, right? It's going to go the other way. I mean, they're no franchise is in it to win a Calder Cup. Let's face it. Yeah. You're in it to win a Stanley Cup. Hey, if you win a Calder Cup, that's fantastic, right? That helps the development of the whole organization. But you're not going to compromise your ability and your roster size. You get to increase your roster size and the cap goes away and blah, blah, blah. Look at where those teams are. What teams can go deep? What teams maybe have some banged up defense core or forward core, and they're going to decimate you in the middle of a 2-2 series, right? If you're going to predict, I would look at all those variables before you basically say, yeah, this is the best team, because it's going to be a different team.
Yeah, playoff hockey. Playoff hockey is a different beast.
Yeah,
entirely.
Yeah, and we talked about it. Like you got to play the right way, right? You gotta have a group, and sometimes when you don't have the continuity in your roster, it can really mess with it. And you can bring in a player that might be you think is a real good player, and that guy disrupts the chemistry of the rest of the guys. And it's not because he's a bad guy or he's he does things wrong or take shortcuts. It's just he didn't fit in, right? Wasn't a good fit.
The tough fit with the AHL in particular, where with the NHL level, you've got players coming up, but you don't really have anybody coming down from a league above. The AHL, where you're kind of sandwiched between NHL and ECHL, the player movement is just unbelievable to wrap your head around. Because how many different players, names, numbers that you need to know with these teams.
Even in the coast, the ECHL, I call it the coast. I'm sorry.
I do too.
So good.
In the coast, you can have a player for a month, and if that player doesn't produce or barely produces, they're out the door.
Yeah, they're in the Southern Pro or the whatever. There's so many leagues that they it's tough to coach. It's tough to coach in the minors because you got to kind of show up at the rink, and you're at the mercy of the big club. And you show up at the rink, and you could have less than a full roster just to play. Well, it's tough. I give a lot of credit to guys that pay their dues, like guys like John Cooper. That he kind of went through every
Great
level.
Example.
He coached in the North American Hockey League, right? Tier 2 junior, and won in St. Louis. He won with the Bandits, and then he went to Norfolk in the American Hockey League. Won. My buddy was the GM there at the time, Mike Butters. I coached against him in the Cascade Cup back in Northern Pacific League, and then Butsy went, and it was when Oren Koulis. So you remember Oren Koulis? So he was the executive producer of 2.5 Men. So and a real big hockey guy. So they bought a franchise in the Northern Pacific League called the Helena Bighorns, and I coached the Fort Vancouver Pioneers, and we played them in the Cascade Cup and beat them. The very next year after that, Oren Koulis and Len Barry, which is Tyson Barry's father, played in the NHL. They bought the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then Butters, who ran their Helena franchise, ended up the GM of the American Hockey League. And then they went on and won a couple of years later. He hired Johnny Cooper. So, if you can win in the American League, you can win the National Hockey League. That's the way I look at it, because it's moving pieces all the time. It's tough. It's tough. And you got guys that don't want to be there. Let's face it. You got guys that might've been a first round pick or, a high second round pick that are going, okay, this is BS. I'm playing here for $160,000 a year. And my contract, if they call me up, I get 6 times the paycheck that I get here, and I'm riding buses and I'm not flying. And I got some meathead that's never getting out of this league that's going to rip my head off. If you know what I mean? Like, there's guys that don't want to be there. There's other guys that are happy to be there, and they're going to work their ass off to get up to the other level. But you're dealing with attitudes. You're dealing with prima donnas that feel that they're above that level. So you have to be a real good people manager. And I believe that in the National Hockey League now too. It's less coaching as a head coach than it is being a people manager, a CEO of that group, right? You have to deal with the guy that's having a bad day, or the guy that's wife's pissed off at him all the time because she's 8 months pregnant and they're on the road. And you got to almost be a little bit of a counselor and keep the guys kind of focused on what they're doing, right? Keeping it light and stuff. Like, everything else is hired out, right? You got skills coaches and mental coaches and all that kind of stuff, right? Power play guy. The head coach is kind of like the tactician. He's just kind of getting everybody the rink in the right mindset. But it's a tougher job in the minors. It really is. No
For
question.
Sure. It definitely is. And I've noticed in the minors that like I said before, if you're not playing to your ability, coaches aren't afraid to bench you.
Well, no.
Or worse.
Yeah. And that's a real good point, Sam, because you can't coach I'm an old school guy. I honestly can't coach in today's game. I've realized, even at the youth level, you can't say a word to the refs. You can't yell at people, right? Like, I could tell you stories. About coaches breaking sticks over the old wooden Sherwoods over our backs at practice because you missed an assignment. I already answered that, Al. It's Chris Knobloch in Hartford. What do you guys think? Al's a Fort McMurray guy. Real good friends with you'll know this goalie, Detroit's first round pick, Sebastian Kosa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Al, who just asked that question, is real good buddies, golf buddies with Gianni Casa, who's Sebastian's dad. So a little bit 6 degrees of separation. Al's a great guy. He's a real good buddy of mine. We like to banter about hockey. He's a Vancouver Canucks fan, so he's not the brightest bulb in the lamp, but good guy.
We have a Minnesota fan right here, so
yeah. Yeah.
What you gonna do? I think my vote for up and coming coach is Jessica Campbell with the Coachella Valley Firebirds, who are right there neck and neck with Calgary in the Pacific, and almost everybody locked up there. Calgary's in, Coachella's in, Colorado, Abbotsford,
they're
Ontario,
done.
Bakersfield, and Tucson.
They're done. They're locked.
Oh, they are. Oh, yep. They haven't updated the AHL standings thing to show San Jose's in. So
no, San Jose
right.
is in.
You're right. Oh, that's right. Because
I changed it.
They're the one team or the one division that doesn't have 2 teams get eliminated. They get 3.
Yeah, I don't like the layout. Yeah. I went kind of through it just to prepare a little bit for the show, and like the uneven divisions, that's got to be tough, right?
They're going to restructure it next year, and I think as we're going to touch on later in the show with Chicago going independent as well, they're going to need to figure out a lot this offseason, just structurally. How are you going to make it all work? But that's my vote for up and coming coach is Jessica Campbell, and I don't think it'll be very long before she gets an NHL job, frankly.
No, that's fantastic. I think it's wonderful. There's a lot of female coaches coming up and getting the opportunities that they never got before, and it's wonderful, right? It's there's a gal, I forget their name, slips my mind, but she's coaching with Canada's. There's my daughter, one of my daughters. She's coaching with the Canada national team, and she's going too. She's going to be in the NHL. And the other guy, that the head coach of the Canada national women team is a Halifax guy, Troy Ryan, and he coaches Dalhousie women's team here in Halifax. So a lot of real good up and coming female hockey, and we're kind of beating the U.S. a little bit lately. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but
just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Shootout the other night. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Let's get to our first sponsor of the night, Bright Path Brewing out of Jim Thorpe, PA. They are our specific American Beauties sponsor here on OCSN. With a focus on flavorful lagers and low ABV session beers, Bright Path Brewing brings cozy small town vibes in every pint. They are open Thursday through Monday, and they are dog friendly, so go check them out. Probably allow other pets as well, as long as it's reasonable. I just know they say dogs on their website, so I'm sure if you want to bring your cat, I don't know with all those dogs being there if that's the best idea, but do you?
I'm gonna leave my dogs there.
Just during the show, though, right? So no, I'm just kidding. Star of the week, Maverick Bourque of the Texas Stars. We just mentioned how good a year Texas is having, and organizationally as well. Texas has a really good prospect pool. Dallas, Texas, just across the board. Maverick Bourque notched 5 goals and 1 assist in 2 games last week, with the Stars closing in on that Central Division title. Got the first hat trick of his professional career Friday during a 7-3 win over the Roadrunners. Then on Saturday, he scored twice more, so 5 goals in just under 40 minutes of ice time across those 2 games. He's tied for 10th in the AHL in rookie scoring. He was a first-round pick for Dallas in the 2020 draft.
Yeah, I mean, great player to pick for Star of the Week for the AHL. I mean, your first hat trick is always a feather in your cap. So
one to remember.
He was a good junior. He played in Shawinigan, and he had some real good numbers in the Quebec Major Junior League. I was a little surprised that he went in the first round. I had him in second or third round in that draft, but I think he's going to be in the NHL next year. I think he's transitioned into the pro game. He's going to get insulated with. They get a real good group in as we talked about in Dallas and Texas. I think he's going to get a real good look at camp. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the opening day roster in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Cap Friendly up here to take a look. 5 unrestricted and 1 restricted free agent among the forward group right now, and some of those guys. I don't know if Max Domi is going to be back there next year. I don't know if Evgeny Dodonov is going to be back there next year. Kiviranta. There's going to be roster opportunities, and when you're looking at guys like Maverick Bourque, like Antonio Stranges, Logan Stankoven's not too far off. Riley Tufte has kind of been up and down. There's going to be a lot of roster space up for grabs depending how Dallas wants to play this out. And I agree. I think Maverick could be with the Dallas Stars to start next season.
Well, and I mean, if you look at it just from a cap perspective, if you want to be successful, you need these entry level guys, right? If you're going to have a deep team that's going to go on a long run, you need some superstars. You need some tough D. You got to spend money, but you still have to have a 20 guy roster, 22 guy roster. And if you can get these kids at $1 million or $950 or whatever the entry level, I think 950 with some bonuses.
725 to 950.
Yeah, that's what you need, right? Yeah, Stan Coven played on the Canada junior team here.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's going to be a good player. Yeah.
I think he'll probably go 1 year in the A just to make the transition to professional hockey from playing juniors. But hey, he is a phenomenal player, special talent.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. I think I said last week, the amount of talent that the AHL has right now, people really are just sleeping on this league, and they really shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
And it's a shame because you lose a lot of guys to Europe, right? That's been happening now for, dozens of years where, you've got some. The problem is a lot of times here, and I've seen it. There was a young man that I coached in junior. Trevor Cheek was his name. So he didn't get drafted. He played 4 years in the Western Hockey League, didn't get drafted to the National Hockey League. And as soon as the draft ended, I think it was maybe 2013. He's a 92. So yeah, 2011, something like that. He went right through the draft, didn't get drafted, and then Colorado signed him to a 3-year entry-level deal. Never got a sniff. Didn't play a game in the NHL. He was up and down. He was with Colorado, and then I think it was they were Lake Erie back then, Lake Erie Monsters, or they were called something else. It was Lake Erie Monsters, not Cleveland Monsters. And anyway, so he was there. Then he went to Fort Wayne in the coast and up and down a little bit, and then they were in San Antonio for a year. Then he signed with Phoenix, and he was with Tucson. Never got a sniff. And the reason is, and it's very simple. No team wants to show up their scout, right? So if your scouting staff drafts all these kids, whether they can play or not, you're not going to give another kid a shot over one of those kids that they drafted, because it basically says your scouts don't know shit. They don't know what they're doing, because here's a kid that went right through the draft, didn't get drafted by anybody, and he's actually putting up better numbers and deserves an opportunity. But if I put that guy in my NHL lineup, even in a preseason game, I'm showing up that, the scouts that drafted this guy in the second round that can't play is, so you can't show him up. So kids like that get caught. That kid's in Europe still. He ended up just, getting frustrated. He's producing, he's doing everything that he has to do at the American Hockey League level, and subsequently in the coast. And then, he doesn't, works his ass off at training camp and doesn't get a sniff. So he's like, okay, well, I can go make more money in Europe than I can in the American Hockey League. Let's face it. I can go over there. I get tax-free money. I get a house. I get a car. When I went over back in the late 80s, early 90s, an American League salary was $12,000-$13,000 for a year. Wow. You had to work in the summer, right? You had to a lot of the Western boys would literally play hockey all winter and go home and farm from May, June, July, and August. And that's why they were in tremendous shape, because they're outside working like that. So it's tough. It's tough, right? But there's a lot of influence from the National Hockey League club, because they'll say, hey, you know what? Why are you playing this kid that we didn't draft when our second round pick is playing 7 minutes a game, and you got some guy that we signed in camp and he's playing 14, and the coach will be like, well, because he's a better player. And they'll say, too bad. We drafted that guy. We've invested in that guy. Our player personnel guys and our development guys are spending their resources and time to develop this kid. And then the American Hockey League coach will say, yeah, but the other guy's better. Well, that's not, you don't worry about that. We'll decide who's better. You play this guy. So it's tough. There's a lot of meddling.
There's an update to the Atlantic Division.
That doesn't look great.
Charlotte won. Charlotte just locked up third.
Who's Charlotte? Okay. Is Charlotte Florida now?
Yep.
Why did Carolina move? I don't understand.
From what I hear is that they kind of are not on good terms with Charlotte, so they switched affiliations.
But again, going back to my Leafs Marlies thing, I think the closer you are, the better you can instill that culture into your. Look what Calgary did, right? They had the team in Stockton, I think, in California, and then they moved them back into Calgary. And you're giving up some gate because you're probably not going to sell as many tickets in the same rink as you're playing the NHL, but you're getting a lot more value in having those kids and those players coming up as part of the group, right?
For sure. And look at the top of the standings right now, too, at the AHL and NHL levels. You've got Boston setting a record for points in a season, and then Providence is right there competing for first. You've got Texas, like we talked about. The Kraken making the playoffs and Coachella being right there. When you have that unity, it makes sense. And the good organizations have that.
You're going to see more of it.
Christian Wolanin, D-Man, and Abbotsford still leading the league after being called up to the Canucks. Yeah, Christian's a hell of a player.
His dad was a hell of a. His dad was tough as nails. Craig played for Quebec. Tough as nails. But I mean he's better off in Abbotsford than he is in Vancouver right now. But they're coming on. They've changed their culture with Tocchet, and I think they'll be okay. They're gonna make some moves. I think they got to get rid of Miller. I don't think JT Miller's a good guy.
And Abbotsford is they're like it's a newer team.
Yeah, and that's close too. That's another Abbotsford's a suburb really of Vancouver. It's on the lower mainland, not far, less than an hour.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't know that the Marlies and the Maple Leafs arenas were that close together.
Yeah. So the Maple Leafs, the Marlies. So I played for the original Marlborough. So the Marlies name it comes from the Duke of Marlborough out of England. And they were called, it was a junior franchise that played at Maple Leaf Gardens. So the Leafs would play, Saturdays, Marlies would play at 2 p.m. Leafs would play at 7 o'clock at night at the old Garden. So just a historic, they've still won the most, they haven't had a franchise. I played the last year that they were in Toronto, and then they moved to Hamilton and subsequently Guelph after that is the franchise. But it was cool. I mean, you played in Maple Leaf Gardens, you got to rub shoulders with the Leafs. We practiced there. They, we'd be getting on our bus and they'd be coming in for practice, that sort of thing. And so that was the Marlies. Marlies was actually a nickname for the Marlboroughs. So Toronto, their franchise, if you go back to when I was playing, they had the Newmarket Saints with their American League team. Then they went to St. Catharines and became the St. Catharines Saints. And then basically they were, before that, they were the New Brunswick Hawks. And then they were the St. John's Maple Leafs. So they've been kind of all over the place. And then when they moved them back to Toronto, they reinstated the Marley name. That it's still been a youth name for a youth hockey franchise in Toronto. Real storied lot, I think McDavid played there, Stamkos, a lot of the top end players played for the Marlies as youth players, but they adopted that name when they moved them back to Toronto. So but a lot of history, the Marlboroughs is a very storied franchise in the Toronto area.
Let's talk Hangman Brewing. Hangman is out of Claymont, Delaware, opened in 2020. Hangman Brewing is your spot for handcrafted ales with a specialty in hazy New England-style IPAs and milkshake IPAs. They are open Wednesday through Sunday, so stop in for a pint sometime. Also, Righteous Felon. You guys know how much I love Righteous Felon. Had them between shows here, just kind of munching because, like I said, I didn't eat dinner tonight. Use promo code OCSN. That'll get you 15% off your jerky bundles, meat snacks, and more. Bourbon Franklin, great choice. Teriyaki Balboa, they just unleashed. That one's pretty good. But yeah, go check them out. We kind of teased this one a little earlier in the show. The Chicago Wolves going independent. So they are not going to be affiliated with any team starting next season. Normally, Chicago has kind of they've bounced around over the last few years with who they've been affiliated with. But this decision to go independent, there's pros and there's cons to this type of decision. And I think the frustrating thing as a fan is, we finally have, 32 NHL teams, 32 AHL teams. The numbers match up. We don't have to bounce around with multiple teams sharing affiliations with their AHL affiliate. And we have that for 1 year. And then Chicago says, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So just from that standpoint, it's a little frustrating of who keeps with who. But Sam, you've got some thoughts on this one. We've kind of gone not quite back and forth on Twitter about this, but we have some differing thoughts on this one, and I want you to share that.
It's important to note that this is the first time that this has happened since 1994.
Yeah.
So
it's not unprecedented, but it's rare.
It's very rare. I don't think it's a good idea. Honestly, if you want my honest opinion, I could see the Wolves folding over this. I don't care if they're financially stable. You need the support of your parent club.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think it's one of those things where you can see some short-term benefit. The decision to go independent can be enough to bring them a championship next year with how they construct the roster. 5 years from now, they're really going to be hurting without that influx of younger talent from being affiliated with a drafted team.
And you can't. I posed this on a podcast I was brought on earlier this week to talk about this. It was a Canes podcast called House of Jerks.
Great podcast name, by the way.
The great guys. I posed it as, you are now working for a place that you have no room to move up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when we had
no room for advancement.
When we had Chris DePiro on, he talked about what's your plus one, what's next, and be getting into that mindset of where are you going from here. When you're at that level, you don't have anywhere to go to advance. It's, well, I'm looking to another team. That can be problematic for an organization. And when you're at the NHL level and it's, people know that's the best of the best, you made it. When you're still at the AHL level, you're setting guys up to go be successful elsewhere, which can be really hard to sustain over time. I do think they're going to be right.
It's a development league.
Yes.
And I got posed the question, well, what about the guys who have the two-way contracts, specifically with Chicago, like Pyotr Kochetkov and Jack Drury and some of those guys? I was like, well, you got to think about it. Sorry, freaking allergies. Kochetkov, you got to look at Carolina's goaltending situation right now. You've got Anderson, you've got Ranta. They're going to keep one of the two, and they're going to bring Kochetkov up. Kochetkov is not going to see the AHL next year. He's too good.
Yeah.
Jack Drury, same thing. They're probably going to offload somebody to keep Drury. They're going to share a team with another affiliate. They have to.
Yeah, the NHL
That's
clubs,
not optimal. That's not optimal either.
Because I know.
Then you just like I discussed before. Then you've got two organizations meddling in who you're playing. Now I'm gonna kind of go off the rails a little bit here, and I have a theory. Just to kind of respond to what you said about how do you recruit guys when they've got it actually is quite easy to recruit them. And you've seen this model. It used to happen a lot. There was independent teams in the International League. For instance, Las Vegas had an International League independent team. And what they do, you'll see cast-offs. You'll see guys like that, organizations have given up on, maybe for behavior. You're going to see guys that you didn't think that were going to come back. Here's a guy like he got in trouble in Vancouver. You know who I mean?
A couple of years ago.
First round pick, played junior for Calgary.
Jake Virtanen.
Something with Jake Virtanen. Those are the type of guys that are going to come back and try to resurrect their career, right? But I'm gonna go in here, and I don't know if you guys have talked about this Scott Housen stuff. I'm wondering, I've heard that 4 or 5 teams have basically demanded that Housen's out. They brought in the NHL because they have the jurisdiction or the ability to make that move based on a percentage of teams that they own or that are member clubs that they own. I think I'm not convinced this is going to happen. I think Chicago is the main team that is trying to get Housen out. And I think this is a ploy to basically, Bill Daly intervened. He came in and met with the group of governors in the American Hockey League that want Housen out. And I mean, Housen's pretty squeaky clean. This guy isn't a guy that they're gonna find out did something to a staff member or did maybe some sexual misconduct or drinking or whatever. He's squeaky clean. This guy, I mean, he's one of the guys that I would be shocked if there was something that these guys have on him that'll be able to push him out, right? So is Chicago heading up this kind of group? And then basically Daly came in and said, like, the guy's doing a good job, right? The league is thriving. Attendance is up. He brought them through COVID. I mean, that was a real tough
that was a big test for
time to navigate through. So is Chicago basically saying, okay, screw you. You're not going to get rid of him. We're going independent. We'll do whatever we want.
It could be.
I never really thought of it like that, but yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Yeah,
which,
so
again,
I'm thinking,
that with Sam's point,
there's a lot more to this story that's going to come out, and trust me, the NHL has a lot to do with what happens, because they could turn around and say to Chicago, okay, go F yourself, go play wherever, you're not playing in our league. Very simple. That's
entirely possible.
With a team less if you have to for a year. I know it takes time to get it approved, but they can rush something through. I mean, there's ways to do it. There's towns like Binghamton. There's places that could handle an American Hockey League team and be seamless and be able to start in the fall. So I would call their bluff and say, okay, yeah, go ahead. You know what? We're gonna have a vote to see whether you're going to be in the league or not. Because, like you said, Sam, we're a development league. You're going to load up on as many veterans as you can, and you're going to sign these guys to come in, and you're not going to have any movement in your roster, so you have an advantage on the rest of us. Like you said, Sam, they could win they could go on a 4-year Calder Cup run. You're not going to have a parent club telling you not to play that kid because he's better than their second rounder. You're going to go out there and be able to. Wendell Young is a very smart guy. He's from here. He's another Halifax guy. So
I think Chicago is on something, and I could see them being in another league in the future and not in the AHL.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. One thing I know for sure is, Sam, you're going to be following that pretty much all summer, and you'll probably be writing about it as well. So you can go to oldcitysports.com, check out whatever articles Sam has on that and everything else around the league. Check out our other podcasts as well. With Johnny Mack being on Center Ice as well. We call them our Big Brother show. All sorts of other podcasts, articles, Flyers Alley, Fan Lot. Go check all of them out. This next segment as well is brought to you by Neshaminy Creek Brewing. Visit www.neshaminycreekbrewing.com. Shoot, I lost my notes here. Sorry. Check out all their other awesome beers, merch, and much more. We kind of already talked just the landscape of the AHL playoffs and how things are going right now.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we got to do it. This is an AHL show. But looking at how things are lining up right now, we've got Hershey and Providence separated by 1 point. We have Texas and Milwaukee separated by 2 points. Calgary and Coachella separated by 3 points. Sam, Johnny, I'm going to ask each of you pick your division winner at this point for each of those, and how home ice advantage is going to be a factor in these playoffs.
Yeah, so if a lot of people don't know, the AHL playoffs is your first round is best of 3. Then you move on to best of 5 with your division semifinals. Division finals is best of 5. Conference finals is best of 7. And your Calder Cup finals is best of 7. I don't like the way it's set up, but who am I?
I bet that'll change next year too, especially if Chicago's going independent.
Yeah. For each of the divisions, for the division title, Atlantic is going to be Hershey. North already took it with Toronto. Central is going to take it with Texas. And I don't know. I think Coachella could pull it out.
They could. I got to take a look at what the schedule is coming up for this games.
There's an important thing to note with Coachella is that they were just sent Shane Wright.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that one too here because Shane Wright, the team that he was playing with,
Windsor Spitfires,
was swept out of the playoffs in the first round. And Shane Wright really didn't look all that impressive in the playoffs. And Windsor, I mean, they absolutely loaded up and went all in for their run this season. And a lot of people thought that they were going to take the OHL title this year. But they are done. 4 playoff games. He had a goal and 2 assists. So less than a point per game pace in the OHL playoffs. I get it. We saw how well he played earlier this year when he was with Coachella. I don't know if that's going to be enough to make a difference with how he's playing lately.
Yeah. I believe Coachella. So Coachella, like I said before, they got Seattle. Seattle's going to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
At a high seed. Calgary got eliminated last night, right? Kind of look at that, that dynamic. But I want to talk about Shane Wright quickly.
Oh, go ahead.
And I think this young man has been given. I read an article yesterday, and they're like, "Oh, Shane Wright loses wherever he goes," and
I hate that.
I've got a problem with that. I mean, I watched him captain Team Canada here. So you got the Michigan, right? The Michigan goals. So game 1, Czech Republic, Canada here in Halifax, and 2. Not 1, but 2 Canadian players, one of them being Connor Bedard and the other one being Adam Fantilli, who just won the Hobey Baker, and he's going to go second overall in the draft this year, right? Michigan player. So they both attempted the Michigan in that game. Game ends 5-2 Czech Republic. Big upset. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Shane Wright went into the dressing room as the captain of this group and basically said, "We're not going to win this tournament doing the Michigan. We're going to win this tournament by playing the game the right way and hard and none of the showboating shit. And that's it." Not one of those kids tried that move again, and they ran the table. So now they beat everybody. Went through and just hammered teams, right? I think he's a good leader. I think he got a raw deal. I read a thing today that he would have slipped. He'd be out of the top 10 if they redrafted that draft. Come on.
That's
right?
Dumb.
Come on. The kid can play. I think he's the pressure that's been put on him when he slips from 1 to 4, ends up in basically an expansion team for all intents and purposes, right? With a lot of weight on his shoulders to produce. And he doesn't, and then he goes down to the minors, and then he gets sent to junior. He's played for 6 or 7 teams this year, right? How do you get, give the guy the raw end of the deal? And you know what? Wins. It wasn't Shane Wright that wins or lost.
No, not at all.
They played a good team, and like we said earlier, there's some parity at these leagues that if you get a hot goalie and you get a couple calls and you get a bounce, anybody can beat anybody. Right?
Absolutely.
You got to have some luck. And I just feel like I think this kid I think he's still going to be a solid NHL player. I think, honestly, I don't think he spends the whole playoffs in Coachella. I think they get a couple injuries in Seattle. I think he's NHL ready.
It could be. And Seattle, I think, is going to be the wild card 1 is where they're at in the standings.
Yeah.
So they'll end up taking on the winner of the Central, which Colorado, Dallas, outside shot, hope and a prayer, Minnesota. It's not going to happen. They're losing.
It's going to be tough.
But wherever they're at, that Kraken team is good. They are fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I think next season, he probably starts on the NHL roster again
100%
next year. I'd be really surprised if he's not.
Yeah.
I just like their colors.
Yeah, I like their unis for sure.
Seattle's cool. Coachellas are both.
Both.
Yeah.
Coachella. I don't know if you've seen Coachella's, Johnny, but
yeah,
Coachella's jerseys are pretty sweet looking.
Yeah. Yeah. My son, when they first released the Kraken, he likes to collect hockey hats and jerseys, and he got a Kraken hat for one of with the S on it, and he was pretty proud of that. So
you know where you can get your Kraken hats with Fanatics. Check out Fanatics for all of your NHL merchandise. You can use our promo code. The link is in the bio. Sam, I copied it over into our show notes from last week. I don't know if it's the same code or not, but
I'm half dead tonight, so
yeah, allergies are kicking your butt, so I'm not going to put you on the spot or anything like that. But yeah, Sam will have the promo code in the bio. She always does. She gets us taken care of there. Last week it was ship 34, and that got you 34% off your order. They've gone as high as 70% on some stuff now, so yeah, go check them out. Yeah, they pretty much are paying you. They're just about giving it away. Also, this next segment of American Beauties is brought to you by Sterling Pig Brewery out of Media, PA. Our final segment of the show tonight, Between the Pipes, Justus Annunen of the Colorado Eagles. Sam, what can you tell us about Justus Annunen?
So his record right now is 21-10-8. His goals against average is 2.59. His save percentage is 91%. He was drafted in 2018 in round 3 of obviously the NHL entry draft. He led SM Liga during the 2019-2020 season with a 1.77 goals against average and a 92 save percentage. And he established a new league record for the longest shutout streak in a single season at 302 minutes, 5 seconds. And he helped Finland capture the gold medal at the 2018 IIHF U18 World Championship.
This is, I think, the second, maybe even the third week in a row now that we have had a Finnish goaltender during this segment. I guess it's just 2 because it was Levi Merilainen for last show. But
I got to say something that my Canes friends always say. Finns get wins.
They do.
They develop goaltenders.
So good.
They develop goaltenders, and it's no secret how. I mean, they basically have a philosophy over here. So I've spent a lot of time in Finland. Recently, I'm involved in a hockey manufacturing company out of Helsinki. So I get over there, and I have a partner that's in Helsinki, and his son played for junior with some of the top IFK Helsinki. And what they do that's different than here. So we have our goaltenders at 7-8 years old playing 75 games and not practicing very much, right? Too much emphasis on the game. Where if you look at it, if you're on a good team and you're a goaltender, how much work are you getting if that game to practice ratio is where it is? It's not good.
Yeah, you're maybe getting 20 to 30 shots in a game. Maybe
if you're on a wagon team. Yeah.
And that's really a good team. So and then playing, in practice, if you're not playing with guys who are consistently putting the puck on the net, you're losing out on reps in practice with seeing the puck.
Absolutely. And that what they do over there is they don't play. They're like 4 practices to 1 game until they're about 12 years old. and it's all development. So not only does that help, the skater or the forward or the defenseman, it's better for the goaltender because they're sitting in a net 5 times a week or 4 times a week at practice, and they're getting 500 puck shot at them, and then they go play their one game. So what about the kid in Toronto or in Detroit or in Phoenix that is playing 5 games a week and getting 15-20 shots because his team's good? So they develop them the right way. They have a national training center that I spent some time in, just north of Helsinki, in the Pelicans franchises there. I forget that.
Lahti.
What's that? Lahti.
Lahti.
Yeah. So it's Lahti, right by Lahti. And it's like the national team training center, and they have kids programs there, right? So you're going in there at 8 years old, 9 years old during school breaks and being taught by the national team program, and they're identifying kids and developing them the right way. I mean, they've been hammering out goalies forever, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Finland is a goaltending factory.
Yeah.
And I don't see that trend stopping anytime soon.
No, absolutely.
That is it for our show tonight. I want to thank Johnny Mack from Center Ice joining us for tonight's episode. Johnny, when is the next episode of Center Ice, and where can the people find you on socials here as well?
So we're live tomorrow night, same time as this show. We were supposed to go last night, so real good guest. Some of your American Hockey League viewers or listeners, Rob Shrimp. So Rob was a first rounder to Edmonton Oilers, ended up in the minors, up and down a little bit with Edmonton, traded to the Islanders, up and down, ended up with Nashville, and then Atlanta, and then he ended up over in Europe. Best hands I've ever seen live, and that I'll throw Datsuk and Pat Kane into that mix. Rob Shrimp, no joke. He was a wizard with the puck. His game in junior was, unbelievable. As a kid, I coached against him as a little kid, and he was unbelievable back then. Unfortunately, I don't think people give him the raw deal and say his game didn't transition to the pro or the NHL game. I disagree, and I think he just got into the wrong situation, right? When you get into the right situation with the right maybe staff and the right group, I take a kid like Dave Boland and Rob Shrimp, were line mates in London and had 150 points each, won a Memorial Cup. They both go. Boley actually got drafted 32nd overall in that same draft that Robbie went 25th. So Boland was in the second round. Rob was in the first. David had a solid NHL career, won a couple cups.
Big piece of Chicago winning.
Kind of got in with a bunch of kids and got insulated properly and got developed properly. And I'm not sure if Rob maybe got a raw end of the deal and went into a situation. At that time, Edmonton had an old boys club, and Greg McTavish and Kevin Lowe, and if you don't come in and toe the line, they'll bury you in the minors. And unfortunately, I think that's what happened to Rob. But dynamic player, real nice young man. He's living in Europe now, doing a lot of development, giving back to the youth, and we're real excited to have him. So tune in tomorrow night. It'll be a lot of fun with him. I got some pretty good stories from when he was a kid. The kid had quite an appetite, and we're going to get into some of that. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. Definitely one to tune in for there. Thank you to everybody who watched and commented throughout tonight's show. Again, we're live Tuesday nights at 8:30. Sorry, we started a little bit later than that tonight. We're trying not to make a habit of that, but sometimes things happen. But that's it for tonight's show. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow across social media. Thanks to our sponsors, Bright Path Brewing, Hangman Brewing, Righteous Felon, Neshaminy Creek Brewing, Sterling Pig Brewery, Fanatics, and of course, the Old City Sports Network. We'll be back for more next week. Till then, stay tuned to our Twitter for more AHL content. For Sam and for Johnny Mack, my name is Dan Bradley. Enjoy the rest of your night, everybody.
Night, guys.